Hi, I'm Ellen Hefner with the State Treasurer's Office as an ambassador for the Oklahoma Stable account. I'm here with Jennifer Wright, who is a practice group leader for estate planning and probate with Ball, Morse, and Lowe. Good morning, Jennifer.
Good morning, Ellen. Thank you so much for having me this morning.
I would love for you to talk about how an ABLE account works with a special needs trust.
Sure. Well, first of all, just as a little introduction, a special needs trust would be a special type of trust that's established for somebody who is receiving certain types of public benefits like Medicaid or supplemental security income, which is also referred to as SSI. And the special needs trust can provide for that individual's supplemental needs without disqualifying them from those benefits. So the special needs trust works because the assets that are held in that trust are not seen as that individual's assets, and therefore they don't get disqualified from those benefits they receive. There are different types of special needs trust, and which type of trust really depends on the particular situation and also on whose assets are going into that trust. But I don't think we're not going to delve into all the different types of special needs trusts for our talk today. And then a stable account is an account which is a savings or investment account for individuals with disabilities that also will not affect that individual's eligibility for those benefit programs that I mentioned. So there are some key differences between special needs trusts and stable accounts, and it's important to understand those differences, and then we can understand how they can be used together. So a third-party special needs trust, which is one of the types of special needs trusts that I mentioned, will not contain a Medicaid payback provision, or what's referred to as Medicaid payback provision. But the proceeds that remain in a stable account at the account owner's death could be subject to that Medicaid payback. So that just means that Medicaid could come back and take those account proceeds as a payback. Now, there are some exceptions to that as well. Also, special needs trusts can hold an unlimited amount of assets. So there aren't really any limits. And they can also hold different types of assets. But stable accounts do have some limits. There are annual limits and also a lifetime maximum contribution limits that can go into those accounts. For stable accounts, there is no income tax, federal or state income tax, on the growth in that account. So if there are earnings on the assets that are in that account, those earnings will not be subject to state or federal income tax. But in a special needs trust, if there is growth or income on the assets in that special needs trust, that would be subject to tax. So those are some of the key differences in the special needs trust and the stable account. And a lot of times we'll recommend for our clients that they need both of these, and they can work together because they do different things. So when you're looking at doing a special needs trust, or if you already have a special needs trust, you want to make sure that that special needs trust contains provisions that will allow your trustee to make distributions to the stable account. So that means that money that's in the special needs trust could be distributed into the individual's stable account. And the reason that is important is because the funds in the stable account can be used for purposes that a special needs trust cannot use the resources for. For example, assets that are in a special needs trust cannot be distributed for housing or food for the individual. But if assets are distributed from the special needs trust to the stable account, then the stable account could make distributions for housing and food. So a lot of times we look at the stable account as an addition to a plan so that it can be used as a spending vehicle for things like that.
Great. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for spending some time with us today and talking about special needs trusts and ABLE accounts and how they work together.